Warning. This video is for educational purposes only. The filmmaker and the instructor assume no responsibility for any actions taken after viewing this video. Learn the rules of gun safety and the rules and laws of self-defense in your jurisdiction. Initiating aggression is always immoral. Initiating aggression is also illegal, except when a government does it, because governments make the laws. No video can be a substitute for in-person training. If you do decide to shoot and or carry guns, be sure to receive proper training from a qualified instructor before you do. The makers of this film are not attorneys. Nothing said, done, or shown in this film is legal advice. Do not attempt anything here unless you are of legal age for your jurisdiction. Even if you are of legal age, you assume complete responsibility for yourself, because you own yourself.
Gun Training with the Non-Aggression Principle, Volume 1. Basic Handgun and Rifle with Jared Waltz.
First rule of being alive is you own yourself. Your house is your property, so is your mind. Money is your property, and you hold it when you die.
Hi, I'm Jared Waltz, and welcome to Gun Training with the Non-Aggression Principle, Volume 1, Basic Handgun and Rifle. In this DVD, we're going to cover a variety of topics about firearms and self-defense, but they all basically boil down to dealing with things that go bump in the night. An important facet of the non-aggression principle as it relates to firearms training is knowing when not to shoot. Just because someone calls you a name doesn't mean you can shoot them. Running away is an option. Oftentimes, it's the preferable option. We're not sheepdogs. Our job is not to protect the herd. We're not vigilantes. Our job is to live and to protect the lives of our loved ones. A gun doesn't make you Superman. It's not a talisman to ward off evil. It's a tool with particular applications. In the application of self-defense, a gun is simply a tool to stop lethal force.
The Non-Aggression Principle.
So why gun training with the non-aggression principle? Does it seem like these two concepts are not often lumped together? Why is that? Depending on who you talk to, there may be a misconception about both sides, both concepts. Gun owners might often be thought of as wannabe vigilantes, toting their gun, looking for trouble, wanting to stop crime, get out there and use their gun for good, for justice. Non-aggression principle advocates might be derided as hippie pacifists who would just curl up in a ball if real trouble ever came. The truth is, like it often is, somewhere in the middle. Being an advocate of the non-aggression principle is more of a live and let live principle. You are happy to exist doing what you do. You're happy to let someone else exist doing what they do. The trouble is when they come to you, when they aggress against you, violate your rights. At that time, you actually have the moral imperative to defend yourself, to counteract the aggressor. And how do we do that? We're humans. We weren't born with sharp teeth and sharp claws like the animal kingdom. All creatures have this natural right to self-defense, but us, we're soft and squishy. We don't have a lot of tools naturally, but we have our brain. With our brain, we've invented tools. The gun is a tool. We can use it to defend ourselves. We can use it to prevent aggressors from violating our rights. Like any tool, you've got to have skill to use it most effectively. Think of sewing. You might be a needle and thread type person, can barely put on a button. Or you might be someone who has the Grand Threadmaster 8000 with a touch screen and a USB port. That's a pretty fancy sewing machine. Either way, you need training. I can't even sew a button on. I've got to ask my friends to practically tie my shoes for me. But with guns, I've had some training. I'm a little better at it. So we want you to train to not have to curl up and die. We want you to be able to effectively defend yourself. So that's the side of the non-aggression principle, folks. Not maybe what you think they were. Gun guys, not the vigilante types. It's kind of like being a black belt in karate. Just because you have a black belt, that doesn't mean you can go down and start fights. That doesn't mean you can go get revenge on the bully you had in high school. You've got a responsibility as a gun owner. You don't carry a gun and then go to dangerous places. You don't think, oh, now I'm armed, I can go ahead and hang out at that seedy bar because if anyone steps to me, I'm good. No. If anything, carrying a gun means you have to go out of your way even more to avoid dangerous places, dangerous people.
Mindset.
Let's talk about mindset. Mindset is huge. I'd rather fight someone with a gun and no fighting mindset than vice versa. It's so critical to have that mentality of being a winner, of going home, of surviving a violent encounter. You've got to be able to flip the switch and turn it on and become someone who will defend their life if you need to. There's two components here. We're talking about the decision to be a victor, and then we also need the skill with which to provide that victory. Here in this video, we're going to work on the skill. We're going to show you some things you can do to get better at gunfighting. The will portion, you've got to work on at home. You've got to do the visualization work on your own time and learn how to become that mother bear defending her cubs. When you are threatened, when you are endangered by a criminal element, it's going to be scary. It's going to be tough to kind of go into the defender mode. We're conditioned to be polite. We're conditioned to try to keep things as evenly as we can in society. It's tough to be able to fight back. You may not want to. You may not think it's a good idea, but the criminal doesn't care. He's after you for some reason. He's already broken the code. He has aggressed upon you. It's okay to get pissed off a little bit. Even as a follower of the non-aggression principle, guess what? You've been aggressed upon. It's okay to fight back. It's your moral right to defend yourself. You are perfectly capable of defending your life and limb and that of your loved ones in whatever way is necessary to stop the threat. And it all starts in your head. It all starts in your mind. It starts at home. It starts with being in the car, visualizing scenarios while you're at stoplights. You never know. But doing the mental work beforehand and having that mindset, that's really what's going to help see you through an extreme situation.
Cooper Color Code.
Let's talk about a tool for mental awareness referred to as the color code. It was popularized by Jeff Cooper, and it's a tool for seeing where you are in terms of how you're perceiving your outside world and if there's a threat or not. It's 4 stages. The 5th stage is optional. We've got white, yellow, orange, red, and black, and they all mean a different thing. Condition white is you are completely unaware. You're going along, thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner, what you've got in the laundry, you got your hands in your pockets, and you're just bebopping down the street, blissfully unaware. Condition yellow is you're paying attention to the world. You're scanning maybe. In theory, condition yellow is what you should be in while you're driving. Let's hope. Condition orange is an upgrade from yellow. Rather than being a general sense of awareness, you've identified something that could be a threat. There is perhaps some suspicious looking characters over there on a street you're walking on. You might want to just keep an eye on them, perhaps. It could be, if you're driving, someone weaving in their lane. That would be enough to get you into condition orange. You want to pay closer attention to that weaving car. Condition red, now we have a definite, specific threat towards you. You're going to take steps to avoid it. The car is coming into your lane. The suspicious looking character is walking towards you, maybe verbalizing something. Now you've got something to deal with. And then condition black is you're actually fighting the person. You're actually doing defensive maneuvers to avoid a freeway collision. Those colors are a way to check yourself. You know, when you're in the grocery store, when you're in line buying your groceries, if you see the color yellow on a magazine, think, oh hey, was I in condition white just then? What just happened? You know what? Maybe I should be more aware of my surroundings when I'm surrounded by people, when I've got crowds, when I've got the world. We don't want to just let bad things happen. We're following the non-aggression principle. Hey, maybe it would be helpful if we saw some aggression coming in advance. That might help us avoid it altogether. That's the best thing to do. Just avoid trouble before it even starts. And by being in condition yellow, that helps us do that. It's not about being paranoid. It's not about being hyped up and agitated and, looking over your shoulder every 30 seconds. But it just means being conscious, being available to interpret the input that you're getting on a minute-by-minute basis out there in the world. We've been using this color code to help us with the physical world, objects in space. Our director, Michael Dean, has actually written a book called A User's Manual for the Human Experience, which uses the color code to help discern emotional aggression, which can often be harder to pick up on than the physical stuff. So go online, look that up, and that might be something to help you in that area.
The Non-Aggression Principle 2.0.
The non-aggression principle says that you do not initiate aggression against another person. The difference between aggression and force is that aggression is a violation, it's a harm of another person, whereas force is just a mechanical motion. Moving my watch is force, not aggression. By following the non-aggression principle, this doesn't have to mean you curl up into a ball and allow yourself to be destroyed. You can defend yourself. And here's where guns come in. Guns are a tool along this continuum of a response to aggression. You can use strong language with someone. You can use your hands with someone who's aggressive. You can defend yourself. You can box them if that's the aggression being thrust upon you. If it is a deadly threat, if it is something lethal, then here we come to the tool. And that's all it is. And like any tool, we want you to have skill in wielding it. That's going to make you more effective out there in the world. We like to call it the non-aggression principle 2.0. Do not initiate or accept aggression. The not accepting aggression part is important because if you accept too much, if it's really deadly, you could die. That's no good. That being said, pick your battles. Taxes are a form of aggression, but you don't go around shooting tax collectors, nor do we recommend it. Pick your battles, live to fight another day. Now let's go out to the range.
Gun safety.
Okay, so the first thing we want to do at the range is to go over the 4 rules of firearm safety. These are the 4 commandments, if you will, for any time you're using firearms. You want to be safe, and these 4 rules help make sure we do that every time. Number 1 is treat every gun like it's loaded. That means whether or not I've looked to see if it's unloaded, doesn't matter. Whether it is loaded, whether it's not, we're going to treat it as if it is. I'm not going to be pointing it at anyone. I'm not going to be being casual with it. I'm going to treat it like a loaded gun. So it's a dangerous thing if used incorrectly. So we want to be cognizant of that and be safe. Number 2, keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on target and you're ready to fire. That means here, my sights aren't on the target. I'm not firing, so my finger is going to be indexed along the side of the gun. A couple different ways you can do it. You can just go straight along the frame. You can go, like in this case of the Glock, you can click it on the takedown lever, just a tactile index, so your finger goes to the same point every time. You can go with the full extension of your finger, depending how long your fingers are, as long as we're out of the trigger guard. So part of not having your finger on the trigger until you're ready to fire means don't catch a dropped gun. Modern guns aren't going to go off if you drop them on the ground. Not a big deal. They're safe that way. The dangerous part is trying to catch it and then your finger gets caught in the trigger guard and the gun goes off when it's pointed in a weird direction. We don't want that, so don't catch a dropped gun. Rule number 3 is never let the muzzle cover anything you're not willing to destroy. That means don't point the gun at people, at property. You want to keep it in a safe direction. In this case, at the range, it's towards your backstop, it's towards your targets. We're here in a nice draw, so we've got good hillside, good background all around. So I can point the gun, that's still a safe direction. There's no life or property that way. Also, as you're walking around, a lot of times the ground can be a safe direction. Unless perhaps maybe you're on concrete, maybe you're on the 2nd floor of a house, then vertical could be a safe direction because you have ricochet problems on concrete. Always know where your gun's pointing. Don't accidentally sweep someone like this jerk. Rule number 4 is be sure of your target and what's behind it, because our bullets are often going to go through a target. And so we can't just shoot the paper target without realizing, oh wait, there's a cow back there. Or oh wait, there's open sky back there. Who knows what's beyond that hillside? So in this case, we've got the target set up, we've got lots of earth behind us, and we know we're in a safe spot. So again, that's the 4 rules. Treat every gun like it's loaded. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Never point your muzzle at anything you're not willing to destroy. Be sure of your target and what's behind it.
Handguns.
Before we can even grab the gun, we've got to make sure we're standing properly. Stance is a component of pistol marksmanship. The good news is it doesn't have to be super duper technical. All you have to do is think about being in an athletic stance. You want your weight slightly over the balls of your feet. You want your knees slightly bent. You want to be relaxed a little bit, shoulders slightly forward. And think about if you were going to punch somebody or get ready to swing a baseball bat. It's all about being ready to move in a dynamic way and being able to absorb forces that come at you, whether it's recoil from the gun, whether it's somebody punching you. You're going to be in that athletic stance, and no matter if you are shooting left, shooting right, maybe off balance, the point is to think of yourself as a graceful, athletic person, which you can be, and the gun will flow naturally from that. So next up after stance is the grip, just basically how to hold the gun. We're going to cover the simple standard two-handed grip in this video, and let's go over the fundamentals. So number one, the firing hand, whether you're left or right-handed, the dominant hand as it were, you want that hand as high up in the tang of the gun as you can. The web of your hand you want buried high in the tang of the gun. The fingers wrap around, the thumb points forward, and you could fire one-handed from this position as well. We're gonna incorporate the support hand for more support, more accuracy, more control. Your support hand wraps around the gun. You want the meat of your hand on this exposed part of the gun frame. Fingers wrap around, thumb also points forward along the frame of the gun. These support hand fingers wrap around your firing hand, and with the thumbs pointed forward, your wrists are canted. And so if you were to open the fingers of your support hand, they point at the ground at about a 45-degree angle. The thumbs forward along the frame of the gun and the canted wrists, they're going to help us absorb recoil and have quicker follow-up shots and be more accurate in general. So again, remember the stance, knees slightly bent, shoulders rolled slightly forward, driving out with the gun, wrists canted, thumbs pointed towards the target, and that's going to give you some great shots. So now that we're standing properly, we're holding the gun properly, now we've got to align the sights properly on target to make sure that the bullets go where we want them to. With the rear sight and the front sight, you've got a notch in the rear, a V cutout or a square cutout, and then you've got this blade, this straight front post. The idea is to line up the front sight inside the cutout of the rear sight. You want it level across the top, and you want that front sight centered equally inside the cutout of the rear sight. You want equal daylight on both sides. So that's your sight alignment. Now you take the sight alignment and you create a sight picture. That means put those aligned sights on the target where you want it to go. My gun is set up to what's called a pumpkin on a post method. So if we're going to shoot at that bullseye on the orange target, that circle of the bullseye I want directly above the front post of my sight. So pumpkin on a fence post, that's the analogy. With our sights level and centered, we put that level sight directly underneath the bullseye, and that's going to create our sight picture. Aligned sights equals sight alignment, aligned sights on target equals sight picture. And when you have that sight picture perfect, that's when you press the trigger. Also, what do you focus on? The human eye can only focus on one thing at a time. We've got three things in play here. We've got our rear sight, our front sight, and the target. What do we pick? Theoretically, you could just go back and forth, focus on the rear sight, front sight, target, rear sight, front sight, rear sight. That's not going to lead to accurate shots. We want to focus on a single thing at a time. In this case, we're going to focus on the front sight. Always focus on the front sight. Make that clear in your eye. Align the sights on the target, focus on the front sight. The target will be a little blurry. The rear sight will be a little blurry. That's okay. Put that razor sharp, crystal clear focused front sight on the same blurry part of the target every time, and you're going to get good hits. The key with actually firing the shot is to make that trigger break without disturbing all we've built so far, our stance, our grip, our sight picture. We want to break that trigger in the cleanest way possible, because as that bullet is shot from the gun, the movement of your own body can still affect the flight path of that bullet. Even in such a short barrel, if you're wiggling around, you can throw the gun off angle. So we want to press the trigger as cleanly as possible. That means using the front part, the front pad of your trigger finger on the face of the trigger, and we're going to press it straight back. As you press it straight back, you can feel it click, and of course if that was a live round there would have been a big boom and we would have had a round down range. So you want that click to be not something you anticipate. You want to press the trigger back in a clean, easy motion and have the click just happen. All your concentration is on the front sight being in focus. The trigger press needs to be smooth and straight and easy. You're focusing on that front sight. So what if you need to fire more than one time? That can often happen, of course, either at the range or in real life. You want to shoot the gun faster and more accurately. You're going to want to use the trigger reset. As you shoot the gun, as you press that trigger, in theory, say the gun cycles due to you having fired a round. The gun now is recocked. Press it again, the gun cycles, press it again, gun cycles. That's a long distance to travel. That trigger is moving forward quite a bit more than it needs to. If you hold it back, keep the trigger fully to the rear, as the gun cycles, hear that click? That's all the forward you need to let that trigger go. There's still another 3/8 inch slack or so, and what that means is if you let it go all the way forward, you just have to take that slack up all the way again before the trigger breaks. So instead, keep it held back, shot to shot, boom. Much less travel for your finger. So if your finger's moving less, if the trigger's moving less, that's less chances you're going to introduce some variation into your sight picture. That's less chance you're going to be inaccurate. So when you're shooting fast, just ride that reset is the phrase, ride the reset. And that's going to lead to more accurate follow-up shots. So let's put it all together to see what it looks like with everything, the stance, the grip, sight picture, all that good stuff. That's what it's going to look like. And as you shoot more and more and more, you're going to find you assume those positions naturally. You won't have to think about, oh shoot, are my thumbs pointed forward? Oh shoot, are my shoulders rolled forward? You're going to just hit those positions naturally. And now let's see what it looks like when maybe everything isn't quite perfect. Say you have a poor grip or a poor stance. Maybe you've got the cup and saucer style. You see the gun flips a lot more. I'm not controlling the gun so much as reacting to it when I don't have as much contact on the frame of the gun as I can. If, say, you were not very high up on the gun, if you were down too low when you grabbed it. Little reload example there. So it just goes to show you have to practice these skills because you never know. Guns run out of ammo. Malfunctions happen. We'll cover malfunctions here in a little bit, and we'll cover some reloading in detail as well. But these things are just going to become reflexive. They're going to become automatic for you.
Reloading.
We're going to need to reload the gun at some point, whether it runs empty, whether we have a malfunction, whether we have a pause in the action and we have time to reload. At some point, we're going to need to put new rounds on the gun. So we want to set our gear up in such a way to make that easy to happen. So we've got our handgun, of course, and our spare mag is typically kept on your support side, opposite the side in which you keep your gun. So as the gun runs out of ammo, you've got it in the firing hand. Just going to bring it up in front of your face so you can see what's going on. The spare magazine on your support side, you're going to keep bullets pointed forward, rounds pointed down, so that when you grab the magazine out of your spare pouch, your index finger is automatically oriented towards the top front of the magazine. You can feel that there's a bullet there with good tension, so you know it's a full magazine. And the pointer finger will also help you index it into the mag well of the gun. And so as you're holding the empty gun in front of you, you grab the new magazine, point it into the mag well. And as you rock back on that back shelf of the mag well, now we know we're in the right spot. We can slam it home with the heel of our hand. From there, just simply come over the top of the gun to rack the slide, and then now it's ready to fire again. We've got a round there in the chamber. So by doing that, by having the bullets pointed forward, pointer finger indexing, you can end up doing that without having to hunt around, without having to think of, oh shoot, I grabbed it and it's facing the wrong direction, or you want to do it the same way every time so that in a stressful situation, it just happens automatically. So point it forward, heel, over the top, rack the slide, look around, see if there's anything that needs shooting. There's two types of reloads that we're going to cover. One is the emergency reload, and one is the tactical or the top off reload. The emergency reload is when the gun has run dry. You've blang, 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 slide lock, no more rounds on board, that magazine is done. So it's called an emergency reload because if you're in a gunfight, you need ammo. So it's an emergency to get rid of that old mag as quickly as possible, grab your new one, okay, and then get back in the fight. So that's the trick there, is the discarding of the old mag. We just want to get rid of it as quickly as possible and go to where we know we have fresh rounds in our spare mag. So as you press the magazine release, often gravity will help that mag drop free, but you can also help it along with your support element, just kind of tearing it out of the mag well. The second type of reload is the top off reload. This is where you have a lull, maybe you've moved to cover, you're in a spot where you fired some rounds, there's still ammo in the gun, but you've expended a few rounds and you want to make sure your next encounter is with a full magazine. In this case, as you're behind cover, as you're in a safe paused moment, you can take that old magazine out. There's still a round in the chamber. There's still rounds in the magazine. You can go ahead and stash that, put it in your pocket, put it somewhere where later on you can get to it if you need to, and then take that fresh mag, put it in the gun, and now you're ready to go. You have a full mag, you have one in the chamber, and somewhere on your person you've got a stashed mag with rounds in it, just in case. So with magazine reloads, with topping off the gun, it's important because magazines do run out. It's not the movies. You can't just shoot and shoot and shoot and never have to worry about running out of ammo. We're going to need to refill this gun at some point. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of these reloading techniques are going to involve letting the magazines just fall to the ground. And you may get in the habit at home, if you're doing this dry practice in your basement or even at the range, you may get in the habit of just automatically going and picking up your mags. Obviously, they cost, $20 some. It's your property. You don't want to lose them or get them messed up. But be careful not to be too conscientious about your magazines. In real life, in a real situation, you're not going to want to have conscious thought going towards worrying about your magazines. You need to be worried about staying alive and staying safe. It's why it's also good to have practice mags versus carry mags. Have some magazines that you just always take to the range. You can mark them up. I've got some aftermarket magazines here, some cheaper ones that I don't care about as much. If they get damaged, so what? These things I can throw around, not care about. Magazines I would carry in real life are kept separate. I've run rounds through them, I've tested them so I know they're reliable, but I don't abuse them, use and abuse them day to day in practice. Let's see what these look like live fire. So that was the emergency reload. The gun ran dry, slide lock back. I had to get a new magazine on board as quickly as possible. So now let's look at a top off reload. Okay, there's a pause for whatever reason. No more bad guys at the moment. Maybe I've taken cover behind something safe. We're gonna pause. Still got rounds on the magazine. stash it in my pocket, grab the fresh one that I know is full, insert it. I don't need to re-rack it because I know there's still a live round in there. And we just keep going. So we've mentioned magazines need to be thought of as disposable. Don't spend too much mental energy worrying about the state of your mags. The same can be said for your gun. If your gun can't take a little bit of abuse, if your gun can't take a little bit of dirt, if you're worried about it getting scratched, get a new gun. You don't want to have your life depend on what's known as a safe queen, a gun that needs to be highly polished and kept from being dirty, like those guys at car shows that tow their ride to the show so it looks perfect, or guys at the Sturgis motorcycle rally who tow their fancy bikes there, have a rivalry with the guys that ride their bikes there. Your gun should be able to be tossed in the dirt. It shouldn't matter. It's a tool to save your life. It's not a piece of jewelry.
Dealing with malfunctions.
Let's talk about malfunctions. There's 3 basic types that you're going to encounter and that are fairly simple to diagnose and solve. And it just takes some repetition to make sure you do it smoothly and you can do it under pressure. The first one is what's called a failure to fire. Basically, this means the gun goes click when you wanted it to go bang. That can be caused by a bad primer. It could have been caused by a magazine not being fully seated, so when you racked the slide, it didn't actually pick up a round. So if you are here at the range or wherever you are and the gun goes click, to solve that, we're gonna tap the magazine, rack the slide, and then assess the situation, possibly shoot again. The reason we tap the magazine is because say you weren't very vigorous in inserting it, and that's what caused the slide not to pick up a fresh round. So by making sure it's all the way in there, racking the slide, you're giving it another chance to pick up a fresh round. And so now we're back in business. That's failure to fire, type 1. A type 2 malfunction is known also as a stovepipe or a failure to eject. That's when the gun, for whatever reason, doesn't fully get rid of that empty piece of brass after you've shot. You can set it up by putting a piece of brass in the ejection port. The symptom of this is when you go to shoot, the trigger will just be dead. There won't be a click like there was on the failure to fire because the slide never went fully forward and got cocked because of that brass in the way. So the trigger is just dead, there's nothing there. When that happens, you bring the gun back, you're looking at it, see what's going on, you can see the piece of brass sticking up in the air. The solution is the same as the failure to fire. Tap the magazine, rack the slide, didn't work, rack the slide, and you can shoot again. That's type 2. Type 3 is kind of a tricky one. It's called a double feed or a failure to extract. What that means, for whatever reason, the last round to get shot never left the chamber. And you can set it up by having an old round in there, put a fresh magazine in, slowly lower the slide. The new round backs up against the rear of the old round, creating a traffic jam situation. In this case, the trigger will be dead. Tapping and racking won't work because of that traffic jam. The pressure from the magazine spring prevents that round from moving with the action of the slide. So what we need to do is lock the slide back, take the magazine out. We're going to rack the slide 3 times to make sure any obstruction is clear. 3 times, you can do it just multiple times, but 3 is a good number to remember. After you've done that rack, 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 now it's time to put a new magazine in the gun, one that has, in theory, good ammo. Rack the slide, and you can shoot. So, again, type 3 is dead trigger, traffic jam, tap rack doesn't work, lock the slide back, rip the magazine out, rack it several times, and then reload it.
Finding your dominant eye.
We've got 2 eyes, but when focusing on distant objects, one eye is more dominant than the other. And when shooting guns, because we focus on the front sight so intently for accuracy, we want to make sure our dominant eye is focusing on that front sight. How do you find your dominant eye? It's really easy. You can do it at home. You just make an opening with your hands, pick a distant object like a doorknob, frame the doorknob with that opening of your hands, and as you bring your hands closer to your face, keep the doorknob in focus, keep it in focus the whole time, and when your hands get to your face, that eye is your dominant eye. In my case, I'm right-handed, it's my right eye. You may find it to be different. The point is, figure it out for yourself, and you're going to be a lot better when you're actually shooting.
Drawing.
So the draw stroke is basically the process of getting the gun out of the holster and present it onto the target in a way that you have good sight picture and you're ready to fire. We don't want to just do that any which way we can. We want to build the draw stroke as a system, just like all the other components of shooting. We want everything to be as repeatable as possible to make sure that we are doing it the same way. It's going to lead to accuracy and just make everything run a lot smoother. So for the draw stroke, we're going to break it down into 4 separate components. The first component, step 1, is acquiring a firing grip. So that means if you have a cover garment, you're clearing the cover garment. That means your firing hand has come onto the gun and established a nice sturdy grip, high on the tang, fingers wrapped around the grip. That's your count 1. Count 2 is after you've drawn the gun, you've come to the limit of the vertical travel. Your shoulder is tight, the gun is in close, and you're ready to start moving horizontally. Think of the whole draw stroke as an L shape, one leg of the L, second leg of the L. A horizontal component and a vertical component. So 1 is the grip, 2 is the top of the vertical component, 3 is when your hands come together for the first time. The transition from 2 to 3, you're bringing the gun up into your peripheral vision. If you're looking at the target, step 3 is when your hands come together and your peripheral vision first picks up the gun. You want to bring the gun up under your dominant eye. That's going to mean when you transition from 3 to 4, the gun tracks under your dominant eye the entire way towards the target. Step 4 isn't so much a full extension, although it can be. 4 is a fluid concept. 4 is as full extension as the situation merits. You can shoot from 2, you can shoot from 3, and you can shoot anywhere from 3 out to full extension. The threat may be moving closer to you, bang, 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 now you're fighting. The threat may be far away, and you can get out all the way to a full extension 4. So to illustrate how firing can be done from different stages of the draw stroke, let's look at some examples. So we have the targets here. We get our 1, grip on the gun, cover garment clear, go to our 2, and this guy here, he's not really in contact range. I can't necessarily touch him. So from here, I don't really need to be at 2 at this point. I can come to 3. I see the gun in my peripheral vision. I can shoot the guy. He's a little close to be at a full extension 4. But if I wanted, for whatever reason, say he was not quite where he is currently, but maybe he was a little far, I come out a little farther away. And then back if I needed to. There's a target further out. Say this guy is not here. That's the threat. So from 2, I can go to 3, out to a full 4. This guy here, oh, he's too close. Back to 3. Say we were closer, I could come to 2. You see, I've got my support hand out of the way. You don't want to shoot yourself in your own hand. That's part of why the 3 count is where our hands come together. You always want to have your support hand meet the gun at the 3, at that peripheral vision, close to your chest index. If you're shooting one-handed, you don't want to bring your support hand out there in space to meet the gun. That's how people end up shooting themselves in the hand. Instead, if you want to put a second hand on that gun, bring it back in close, have your hands meet, and then you can drive out again. Let's cover a couple of key refinements to the 2 and 3 position in particular. From the 2, you want to make sure the gun is canted outboard slightly. That slide is going to be reciprocating. If you've got it canted in, you're going to be digging into your chest with the slide as you fire. So make sure as you bring it up, it's out a little bit, and that's going to let the slide move freely without tearing up your body, your clothes, etc. On the position 3, when your hands come together, the reason the 4 to 3 is fluid, and the reason we might have to shoot from a 3, is if this guy is at a medium range, not close enough to necessitate a full retention position, the position 2, if you're out at full extension, he could grab your gun away from you. That's a big lever arm for him to work on. You could be in trouble by sticking it too far out. Or if you're in a hallway, if you're in some enclosed area, and you've got a corner here or a doorway, you don't necessarily want your gun to be the first thing coming around the corner or through the window. Keep it back a little bit. The gun is horizontal. You can shoot accurately from here, especially the more you practice, the more you build in a positive index so you know your rounds. Even if you don't have a full perfect sight picture, your index that you've practiced will help reinforce those rounds going on target where you intend. So if the guy is too close, if it's a hallway type area, bring the gun back a little bit as you move around or as you face your opponent, and don't have that lever arm available for him to grab.
Cover garments.
Out here at the range, we often just have an open carry situation where there's no cover garment covering our holster or our mag pouches. That's easier, you know, when you're out training, you don't necessarily want the hassle, quote unquote, of dealing with your cover garments. The problem with that is it can lead to bad habits, and you avoid doing the work, you avoid getting those repetitions in of clearing cover garments. And if you're carrying a gun out in the world in a non-open carry area, or if you choose to carry concealed versus carrying open, you're going to have garments covering your hardware. And so at the range, it's really important to practice uncovering your stuff. And at the range is a perfect place to do that. Typically, people have 2 different types of cover garments. That's the closed front, i.e. a buttoned shirt, a hoodie, a sweatshirt, some kind of thing where it needs to be lifted out of the way. And so you want to make sure when you go to the 1 count of your draw stroke, the acquiring a firing grip on the weapon, part of that process is removing your cover garment. And that's going to happen best with your support hand, the hand that's not going to initially grab the gun. And so how that works is you're addressing the target. Step 1 is to remove the cover garment. And so you can grab the hem, bring it up out of the way, then you achieve your firing grip, position 1, go to 2, 3, 4, and say you want to reholster. You never want to be in a hurry to reholster, either in real life because there could be more bad guys, or at the range because if you always practice immediately going to holster after shooting a gun, in a real life situation, you may do that by reflex. You may shoot a gun, automatically reholster, and then, oh wait, there's another bad guy, or the bad guy you first shot is still a threat. Now you've got to go through the whole process of drawing again. So better to, after shooting, take your time, scan around, and also make sure your cover garment is out of the way before you reholster. As you've been shooting and moving, that cover garment may have gotten in the path of the holster, and when you go to re-put your gun in there, you can get it hung up. That can cause a problem. One thing, especially with some of the fleece pullovers that have those toggle tightening straps, those straps have been known to get caught inside the trigger guard. So you could have a strap, a toggle strap, inside your holster, go to put the gun away, and then fire the weapon. That toggle strap can press the trigger as you holster with enough force to do that. So always make sure the path to the holster is clear. You'll hear some people say, always practice reholstering without looking at the holster. You should be able to go through your whole draw stroke blind. That's fine, but to avoid shooting yourself in the leg by having your holster blocked when you reholster, to avoid that, better to take a quick check to make sure the path of the holster is clear. Don't worry about taking your eyes off of the bad guys, because why? If we're reholstering, we've already made sure, at least for the moment, there's no current threat. So if there's no current threat, we're safe enough to reholster. We're also safe enough to glance down at the holster to make sure it's going to go in safely. So that's with the closed cover garment, closed front, not open. We're going to come up and out of the way. The other type of cover garment is considered an open front garment. You can see I've unbuttoned my shirt. This could be a long shirt you wear. This could be some sort of jacket, a suit coat. The point is the garment is open in the front. It can be spread apart versus lifted up. What we're going to do here is use our firing hand to sweep the garment out of the way as we go down to acquire our firing grip. And so it's covered. We sweep it into our one, and depending on the garment, this can be easier or more difficult. And here's where practice with your carry system, with your clothing, is really important. Some guys that carry all the time even go so far as to sew fishing weights into the triangle, this corner of their cover garment that they wear habitually. That way the weight in that material helps it go back farther, enough for them to be able to get a good grip here. What you don't want to have happen is to grip the gun with your cover garment, and then now we've drawn and we're all fouled up. It's no good. You may find it's better, like with the closed front garment, to pull it up out of the way with your support hand before going down with your firing hand, drawing 2, 3, 4, bang. Again, just like with the closed garment, you got to make sure that open garment is out of the way. Okay, no more threat. Glance at the holster. We're back down.
Revolvers.
Our grip needs to differ slightly when we're shooting a revolver. A full thumbs forward grip is going to get us in trouble because of that cylinder gap in front of the cylinder here. Hot gases are expelled from that area. So if we have a full thumbs forward grip like we do on a semi-auto, we're going to burn our fingers. That's no good. So instead, on a revolver, just keep your hand back more on the grip itself. Don't get too far forward. You still want to be high on the grip. You still want to have your thumbs forward, but you're not so dramatic, so candid to where you're going to get burned by that cylinder gap. The other thing to keep in mind is when you're firing a revolver, here this one is unloaded, a lot will have this hammer, and you get a lighter trigger pull by cocking the hammer first, making the trigger single action versus double action. The difference between single action and double action, meaning double action, the trigger is both cocking the hammer and releasing it, whereas when you cock it yourself, single action, it's only doing one thing, releasing the hammer. In a self-defense situation, we're going to want to train to shoot double action. Every time, pressing the trigger, letting it cock the hammer as it fires. The single action will be slightly more accurate because without that, all that heavier pull, all that take up, the gun, without that, the gun has much less chance to move around. So marksmanship wise, single action may be more accurate, but self-defense wise, you want to make sure you're always pulling the trigger through the full cycle. Under stress, under pressure, that's going to be too tricky. You might miss, you might slip off, your hands might be wet, who knows. We don't want to train always cocking the hammer first. Defensive rounds, the high power, high effective, really good self-defense rounds can be $1, $1.50 a round. You're not the government. You've got to pay for your own ammo, so you don't necessarily want to shoot the expensive stuff all day long. Fire some 38s while you're at the range. Practice a little bit with the defensive stuff to make sure your gun likes it and is reliable. But you know, we've got to be economical about this too. So in the gun right now, I've got 3 38 rounds and 3 357 rounds. Let's fire all 6 so you can see the difference in terms of the snappiness, in terms of the noise, and all that entails. So, as you can see, a good bit of difference. In this 4-inch gun, it won't be a huge deal, But those little snub-nose revolvers that you might stash in your purse, it's important to know how they perform with 38 versus 357. You might want to buy the most powerful dirty hairy ammo in the store, but if it doesn't shoot well in your gun, if it's too snappy for you, look at a quality 38 round instead perhaps. So that's why we want to A, make sure you can handle the load you're shooting, and B, why not shoot with the milder stuff longer throughout the training day just to shoot, save your pocketbook and save yourself. You don't need to deal with all that flash and recoil every shot you take. In addition to the 38/357, if you have a 44 Magnum revolver, they can also fire the 44 special rounds, and so that's another kind of a combo caliber there. It's important to practice shooting from these up close positions like the number 3 or the number 2. The muzzle and in a revolver, the cylinder gap, they're going to be much closer to your face than you're used to, than if you only have shot at full extension at the range before. And so you want to be able to shoot up close without freaking out too much about that noise and the smoke and the flash in your face. It can be a little disorienting if you're not used to it. And so take the time at the range to practice those techniques. So when you do it for real, you're not blown away and surprised by all that flash in your face. So we mentioned in training firing the revolver double action, not cocking the hammer between each shot. But let's say you were doing some practice where you really just wanted to focus on super duper perfect sight picture, where you really wanted to have that shot break and manage the front sight in focus, manage it during recoil, and not necessarily have to worry so much about that long trigger press just for a training component. Just like when we isolate components of the draw stroke to work on repetition, so we can with the sight picture. In that case, you may want to cock the revolver first, get your good sight picture, and really just get it as super duper accurate as you can. Okay, that's fine, but that means at some point we may have a cocked revolver and we're done shooting. So we need to decock it, and we want to do that in a safe way. That doesn't mean just using one hand and decocking it, because your thumb could slip. If the thumb slips when you try to do it accidentally, that could create a problem, leading to a negligent discharge. The gun went off when you didn't want it to. Let's cover how to actually decock a revolver that you may have cocked for whatever reason, practice-wise, and now want to lower the hammer in a safe way. The first step is to pull back on the hammer to relieve the tension in the internal springs. Pull back on the hammer first, and then what you do is you press the trigger while still holding on to the hammer. We're going to take our support hand and block the firing pin channel, pull back on the hammer, press the trigger, block the hammer, and now with the trigger pressed, the hammer can move forward freely. Moving forward, out of the way, you're holding on to it, and you're lowering it the rest of the way. So it's kind of 3 steps. From the cock position, pull back to relieve tension, press the trigger while blocking the hammer. Lower it slowly. Decocked. Another reason not to just simply decock with one hand is that when you're decocking a revolver, you're kind of in an administrative mode. You're not really in a shooting mode. It's easy to get casual with your support hand. You might be so concentrating on the hammer that your support hand is just up here forward of the cylinder. So if that hammer slips, not only did you have a negligent discharge, but now you've also blasted your support hand with gases from the cylinder gap, potentially causing lacerations or other problems. So let's not have any of that.
Being armed at home.
Once you've made the decision to own guns and to be armed, it's important to stay armed, even at home. Criminals prefer victims who are unaware, and most folks let their guard down when they're at home. Don't be one of those potential victims. Stay armed around your house, doing yard work, even taking a shower. You can put the gun under a towel while you're in the shower. A gun in the nightstand doesn't do you much good in the living room if someone kicks your door down. Now, having guns at home, there are storage considerations if you have kids or house guests, and so it's important to address those. Depending on your particular household situation, you may have roommates, kids, visitors, and so it's really important when you have guns not under your control that they are kept locked up securely. Going back to the color code, we mentioned condition yellow being the state you're in while driving. You can also be in condition yellow at home. You can live in condition yellow. It doesn't have to be paranoid or stressful. It's just being aware, if you recall. So at home, you're still paying attention to who's coming to your door. You're still paying attention to those noises you hear downstairs in the middle of the night. Really, the only time you should be in condition white is while you're asleep, while you're not conscious. Here's where having a dog can help at home. A dog at night, while you're in condition white, can alert you to things that need your attention. So train your dog well, and they can be kind of an early warning system for you.
Dry practice.
Dry practice can be an excellent way to hone a lot of your skills without having to go out to the range, without having to shoot live ammo. You can do so much at home for free and at your convenience. There's no gasoline, there's no buying ammo. You can practice the draw stroke. You can practice getting your grip. You can practice your sight picture. You can practice your reloads. You can practice your malfunction drills. There's so much you can do, and it's just a great way to keep up with all that training. All right, we're going to double check to make sure that the gun is unloaded. Take the magazine out, nothing in the magazine. Lock the slide back, nothing in the gun, nothing in the chamber, completely empty. Now we can insert our plastic dummy rounds or snap caps. These are inert plastic ammo that you can put in the gun to simulate using real ammo. And it lets you get some of the action, some of the procedures done in an indoor way without having to worry about live ammo. You can buy them at, local sporting goods stores, online. So now those are in. We've loaded the dummy round. Now we're ready to dry fire. Hear that click? And so what you can do is, as you get your sight picture, do the click, feel the trigger, and then you can rack a new round in place, reset the trigger, bang, we're good. Again. So you can reset the trigger every time, but you don't have to. Once you get that good sight picture, you can get a trigger press, kind of take a pause, get a trigger press again. You're going to be pressing a dead trigger, but you still get the benefit of being in the proper stance, of having proper sight picture, and you can even choose different points on your dry practice target to focus on to simulate shooting multiple targets, shooting the same target multiple times. And in between all this, you can choose whether or not to reset the slide for a fresh trigger press, hear the click, and then again we can just kind of shake it off and get a dead trigger, all the while building those muscle memories that are going to help us when we get out to the range for real. A couple things you want to do to start off right when you're doing a dry practice session like we are right now. You want to make sure the gun's unloaded. So we've got unloaded firearm. Our magazine, we've got no live ammo around. We've got these plastic dummy rounds that are not, they're not ammo. It's just plastic. And so we don't want to grab a live round by mistake, shoot the basement wall. Now, that being said, you do want to pick a target that is going to be a safe backstop. Even though it's dry, even though we're empty, we still want to follow the rules of firearm safety. So in this case, we've got a blank basement wall we're going to be shooting towards. And the other tip is to have your dry practice target be temporary. Take it down when you're done with your dry practice session. What that does is it eliminates that desire for one more shot, one more rep. You may have already strapped on your real gun with your live ammo. You happen to be passing down the hallway and you think, I'll just do one more. If that dry practice target's there, you might be tempted someday to just take a shot and whoops, forgot the gun's loaded. Now I got a hole in the wall, no good. So take the target down when you're done. Let's go through some reps. Now it's important to remember, just because we're indoors, just because we've verified that the gun is unloaded, that doesn't mean we forget about the 4 rules of firearm safety. We're still going to treat the gun as if it's loaded. We're not going to point it at anybody or anything we're not willing to destroy. We're going to keep our finger off the trigger until our sights are on the target. In this case, we're shooting dry. Finger comes off the trigger. We are going to make sure we have a good backstop. In this case, we hung our dry fire target on a blank basement wall. And that's it. It's all about doing these repetitions, making sure that you will always follow the 4 rules, even if you're tired, even if you're exhausted, even if you're confused. That finger doesn't go on the trigger until you're ready to fire. Set it up again. And then we're off the trigger. Simple as that. So with our draw stroke, the 4 counts. Each is very important, as well as the transitions between all the steps. So at home, dry, you have the benefit of being able to go over each step separately, really get a lot of repetitions in, make sure you're not making any mistakes at all. So you can start off with just facing your target and just count to yourself. You can just get the 1 count and kind of reset, and just get the 1 count and reset. So you're clearing your cover garment, you're getting the grip on the gun, and you're addressing the target. From there, you can go just work the 1 and the 2. So 1 to the 2, and then back into the holster, do it again. 1, 2, and reverse. So do that as many times as you feel necessary, because as you go out in the world day to day, your clothes change. You might have your holster appendix style one day, behind the hip the other day. So you can do some reps for whatever cover garment you happen to be wearing at the time. Go from 1 to 3. 1, 2, 3. And then reverse. Set up again. 1, 2, 3. Out to 4 if you want. Back to 3. Back to 2. Back in the holster.
Rifles.
With a rifle, our stance is going to be pretty similar to that with a pistol, in that the weight's distributed over the balls of our feet, our knees are slightly bent, our shoulders are slightly forward. It's that athletic position. And in holding the rifle, when you mount the gun, that kind of shoulders forward position, just as it helps you absorb the recoil from a pistol, it's going to help you absorb the recoil from the rifle. You're kind of enveloping it with your upper torso. Stance becomes even more important with a rifle versus a pistol, because the recoil is going to be so much greater. We need to absorb it that much more proactively. And so you don't want to be on your heels. You don't want to have your knees locked. You don't want to have your hips forward, and you don't want to have your shoulders back, because the rifle is going to want to push you backwards as it fires. And so if you start off knees locked, shoulders back, hips forward, you're going to end up getting way off target a lot sooner. Whereas if you get that athletic stance, come forward, and you can kind of drive the gun through the recoil, and don't let the gun beat you up. Don't let the gun move you around. You're the operator, you're the driver, you tell the rifle what to do. And that starts with proper body mechanics. Next, from stance, is gripping the gun, mounting the gun, bringing it to your body. Just like with the handgun, you want the web of your hand high on the tang of the grip. Except our support hand, of course, unlike a handgun, we're going to get out further on the handguards. Depending on your rifle, you may have more or less room to grab. So you want to come out as far forward as you can. That's going to help stabilize the entire triangle of the rifle, your arm, and your body. By making that triangle bigger, especially with multiple targets, you're going to be able to start and stop more cleanly, more accurately, versus if you've got a real short, tight grip on the rifle, when you swing, the front of that rifle is going to want to overswing, or it can overswing easier, versus if you're out farther on it, you've got more control. Next, bring the sights, whether it's iron sights or some sort of optic, bring the sights up to your eye line. Don't bring your eye down to the sights. Be looking at the target, bring the gun up into your field of view, versus trying to find the sights with your head. We've got our firing hand, we've got our support hand. what else is there? Well, there's our arms. What do you do with your elbow? In traditional target shooting, you would have this elbow out to the side, kind of the chicken wing it's called, and that creates a nice deep pocket between your shoulder and your chest for the stock of the gun to ride in. And target-wise, that's going to be more accurate. It's going to really lock the gun into your shoulder, but it's also easy to get shot. If you've got cover you're coming out from around, you can get shot, plus it just makes a bigger target. Keeping the elbow down makes a smaller target for the bad guys, but it also just dovetails nicely with the facing the target, shoulders forward, wrapping the gun into yourself. Just keeping everything nice and tight goes along with keeping that elbow in versus the chicken wing. The nice thing about the AR is it's very ergonomic. The controls are easy to operate and they're convenient. The magazine release is here just where our trigger finger rides, where it rides when we're not actually firing the gun, you know, the indexing along the frame. So magazine release is there. The safety is operated by the thumb, and you can do easy on, easy off. And this here is the bolt release. So when you slap that, you see the bolt slides forward. You can smack that with the heel of your hand, and under stress, under pressure, that's going to be an easy movement to make. And then of course the charging handle itself, you can rack the slide or the bolt that way. The safety on an AR, you want to be comfortable turning it off and on. So when you're not actually pointed in at the target, it should be on safe. And so as you're scanning around, it's on safe. We see a threat, comes off safe. Now we're on safe, off the target, scanning around, off safe, fire, on safe. Real easy to do, and so get in the habit of flicking that safety on when you come off the target. So for me and a lot of people, the ergonomics of the AR are very nice. They're very good and they fit a lot of people and they work well for a lot of people. Ergonomics, of course, are subjective though. You may prefer the AK, you may prefer an HK. In handguns, you may like a 1911 versus a Glock. But the point is, when a gun fits you, when the ergonomics correspond with your body and your style of shooting, you don't just become a person with a gun. You become a bullet delivery system. You become as efficient a shooter as possible, and a trained citizen goes from victim to victor like that. And like that, though, takes the practice, takes the range time, takes the mindset. We've got the two primary types of reloading with the rifle, just as we do with the pistol, the emergency reload and the tactical or the top-off reload. So the emergency reload is when the gun is run dry and we need to give it new rounds as quickly as possible to stay in the fight. So let's see what that looks like. And the tactical or top-off reload is when we fired a few rounds and there's a pause in the fight, no more bad guys at the moment, perhaps you've moved to some cover. The point is, you've got a bit of time, a lull, to get rid of the mag with rounds still in it, stow it somewhere on your person, grab a fresh mag that you know is full, and that way you can be assured of having a fully loaded gun if you do need to use it again. Okay, there's a pause. I'm gonna take that okay mag out, put it in a pocket or something. New mag comes in. Look around, oh, there it is. That's it.
Dealing with malfunctions.
Rifles, we're gonna practice the three most common malfunction clearance types, just like we did with pistol. Type 1, failure to fire. Type 2, failure to eject. And type 3, failure to extract. The setup is pretty much the same on all three as it was for the handgun. For the type 1, failure to fire, we're going to have the bolt closed on an empty chamber and a magazine with rounds in it. So what happens in the failure to fire is the trigger goes click when you wanted it to go bang. So the solution is tap the magazine, run the bolt, and then assess the situation, fire again if needed. So let's see what that looks like. Tap, rack. Type 2 is the failure to eject or the stovepipe. In that case, you have a piece of brass stuck in the ejection port, creating the stovepipe situation. Again, when we go to press the trigger, it's going to be a dead trigger. It won't go click because it hasn't cocked. The bolt hasn't come forward enough. As you come forward, oh, nope. Try again. Success. The thing with the stovepipe is the ejection port is on the right side of the gun. So as you rack the bolt, you want to give the gun a little bit of a flip to help gravity work with you, not against you. By giving it that little bit of a flip as you rack it, the brass is going to have a chance to fall out and get clear that much quicker. Type 3 is the double feed, or the failure to extract. That's where an old round stays in the chamber. The extractor didn't pick it up for whatever reason. Meanwhile, the bolts tried to pick up a new round, and you've created this traffic jam situation. We're going to do a tap rack. The tap rack won't work because of the traffic jam. So then we have to rip that magazine out, rack the bolt 3 times, new mag, reload it, and try to fire again. Okay, didn't work. Lock it back. Old mag comes out. Rack it, rack it, rack it, rack it. Grab a new mag. Load it. And there you go. We're here shooting at the public range, and as you can see, sometimes public ranges can be a little messy. It's not a bad idea to just get a piece of remnant carpet to take with you to the range. It doesn't mean you're not tough. It doesn't mean you can't lie down in the dirt. It just means you accept the realities of the situation. You're going to be out here practicing. There's no need to get all laid up in broken glass and cow crap and whatever else is out here. So carpet's cheap. You can get a yoga mat for cheap. It's just something to make your training more effective, more fun, so you're more likely to do it. You're not going to want to come out to the range if you know when you're done you're going to be all dirty and cut up. No one really needs to practice lying in the mud. So get a piece of carpet. It's going to make it a lot easier for you. I mentioned the carpet as a good piece of gear to bring to the range with you. The other thing, of course, is just making your own target stands. These are simple PVC stands. You can get this kind of stuff at any hardware store. What I've got here is 1.5" PVC. These are 1x2 furring strips. These are, I don't know, 70 cents a piece. I don't know, a 10-foot stick of PVC is super cheap. Using elbows and T's, and you can create a real nice, portable, effective target stand. The furring strips go inside the pieces of pipe, obviously. From there, I've got binder clips from an office supply store. Piece of random cardboard from a TV box, a refrigerator box, or whatever you happen to have access to. The cardboard gets clipped to the furring strips with the binder clips, and you're off to the races. On really windy days, you can put rocks or pieces of wood or something over the base to help keep it from blowing around. They're fairly stable as is. Again, with the binder clips too, if it's super duper windy day, you might want to add a couple extra binder clips to the sides to keep the cardboard from blowing around too much. Once you've got the cardboard set up, then it's just a matter of stapling fresh targets to it. And you've got a really great effective target system that costs hardly anything, and it's really easy to use. In terms of the 4 safety rules, I'd say if you had to pick one that was number 1, that'd be the keeping your finger off the trigger until your sights are on target and you're ready to fire. It's so critical. When you're drawing from a holster, you might accidentally sweep your knee. Of course, that's not ideal or desired, but it may happen. But if your finger's off the trigger, nothing bad is going to happen. The gun won't go off on its own. Most of the safety rules, if you follow 3 of them, a violation of 1 shouldn't lead to a problem. If something is behind your target that shouldn't be, well, if your finger's not on the trigger, if you're treating the gun like it's loaded, if you're not pointing it at what's ever behind the target you don't want to shoot, then violating rule 4 shouldn't lead to a problem. However, we do want to focus on all 4, but the trigger finger thing is kind of one you can practice following in daily life. With a staple gun, just, keep that finger indexed. I have a friend who's a contractor, and when he's working, he even does it with his nail gun, with his drill. You can reinforce these habits in your daily life. At home with the hair dryer. When you're not blow drying your hair, get that trigger finger, as it were, alongside the hair dryer. When we were standing with the rifle, I talked about having your support hand farther forward on the rifle to help give it support, because obviously the rifle is a lot larger and heavier than a handgun. So having that support arm out in front is going to make it easier to control. Well, in addition to doing that, with a rifle, if you have to engage and fire more than one shot, it might be beneficial to not stand and drop into a more supported position to help you be more accurate. So we can go from standing to a kneeling position, and there's a couple finer points of that. Your support knee, i.e. the leg that your support hand is matched up with, that's going to be the knee that's up, and your support hand elbow rests on that knee. And you want the bone of the elbow to be in front of the bone of the knee. You don't want the bone of your elbow wobbling around on the bone of your knee. You want your elbow in front of your knee, so your knee is kind of poking into your tricep a little bit. That bone on soft tissue is going to help lock everything together, so under recoil, your support arm just rocks against your knee. Your back leg can be either foot up, bent like this. You could be sitting on your ankle. That's going to depend on personal comfort, personal flexibility. And then again, our hands, our elbows are still oriented the same way as when we're standing. So the only difference is support knee goes under support elbow, and your dominant leg crosses underneath or sits up top on your ankle. From kneeling, we can also go to lying down or prone position. And this is going to be the most stable of them all. We have the most body contact points with the ground. We're not standing up, wobbling in space, in the wind. Even kneeling, obviously there's some room for movement. Now I've dropped down into what's known as the prone position, basically a shorthand way of saying lying on your belly on the ground. This is going to be our most stable platform, and there's a couple points that will help you maximize it. Our support elbow is going to be pointed down. It's going to be underneath the rifle. Our support hand is still going to be further forward on the handguards of the rifle, but you want to make sure you're not gripping it too hard. The hand acts more as a cradle than a grip. Your firing hand is still high on the tang of the gun. You're still gripping well with your fingers. And the important thing to remember is to pull backwards slightly to keep the stock of the rifle well into your shoulder. You want a good tight fit there. If the gun to shoulder contact is too loose, under recoil, that's going to bounce against your body and just be painful. It's hard to shoot a lot that way. And keeping the gun tight there helps alleviate that. And that applies whether you're standing or kneeling or prone. Keep a good stock to shoulder contact. That shoulder absorbs the movement of the gun and transfers it down through your body. That's also why we bring this firing side knee up as high as we can. Again, this is flexibility, body mechanic dependent. The more you do this, the easier it will get. The wedge shape of the leg helps soak up that recoil. It just transfers it all into the ground, and you're not going to feel it in your body so much. This is a great position for accuracy out in the field, because in the real world, we don't have shooting benches like a lot of ranges have. You're not going to have a table to rest off of. You're not always going to have a log to shoot off of. So it's important to know how to shoot on the ground properly. Your support side leg is splayed out to your support side, just flat, straight along the ground. You still want to bring the gun up into your eye line versus having to bend over and try to find the sights with your eye. And from here, we're going to be able to make really good hits. Kind of a sneak preview for volume 2. In the reloading section, I mentioned a tactical or a top-off reload can be done when you're behind cover. Well, what is cover? The definition of cover is something that will stop a bullet, something that will keep the bullet from hitting you. That's different from simple concealment, meaning that which makes it harder for you to be seen, but won't necessarily stop a bullet. So here we are, I'm standing up. If the threat is in front of me, I'm addressing the threat. I have neither cover nor concealment. There's some sagebrush here. I can squat down. Now I've got some concealment. I'm a smaller target, and in addition, I've got this sagebrush in front of me providing some concealment. However, that's not going to stop a bullet. This isn't cover. I'm not really safe here. Now I've moved over a little bit. We've got a berm here. We've got some earth. Now if I kneel down behind this berm to take some shots, now I've got effective cover. I'm obscured from the threat, and I've got protection from incoming fire. That's what's known as cover. This is where I'd be safe doing a tactical reload. So now we're back from the range, and we want to make sure our hands are clean. During shooting, you're exposed to a lot of chemicals, lead, other deposits, other compounds that can get into your system and over time be a bad deal. So you want to make sure you wash your hands before eating or smoking a cigarette or touching your face if you can help it. It's also a good idea while you're still at the range to have some sort of handy wipes or hand sanitizer to do kind of a first pass before you get back home where you've got access to a sink. Make sure you use cold water while you're washing your hands. That's going to keep your pores small. It's going to prevent as many chemicals as possible from entering your system through open pores like they would be if you used warm water. So cold water, get a good scrub going, get all between your fingers and the palms of your hands. Think of what you would want to do before eating food. It's important we keep firearms training alive as a cultural institution. It'd be a shame for it to be considered old-fashioned or out of style. Unpopular activities have a tendency to become marginalized, and we just may not have the opportunity one day. Firearms training, knowing how to defend yourself, can absolutely save your life, and it's important we're always able to share this. Take a friend shooting, even better, take a kid shooting. Shooting a real gun might be the one thing to drag him away from the latest Call of Duty game. Henry David Thoreau said it well. We cannot but pity the boy who has never fired a gun. He is no more humane, while his education has been sadly neglected. But education is more than just memorizing passages from the great texts. It's about having skill and the ability to put that skill into action when need be. You can listen to intellectual analyses of the non-aggression principle all day long, and there are dozens of great podcasts if you wish to do so. But nothing beats range time for backstopping your theoretical understanding. If your worldview is that of the non-aggression principle, if that's how you live your life, what are you going to do when someone actually aggresses upon you? Yell at them? Call 911, hope the state sends someone else with a gun in time to protect you? Fancy book learning is nice, but you don't want to be just a theoretical libertarian. A theoretical libertarian can talk all day long about the non-aggression principle, but doesn't own a gun, maybe doesn't even know how to use a gun. Millions of eloquent words have been written about the non-aggression principle, but at its most basic, the non-aggression principle is so simple you can explain it to a child. And you should. It's probably the most important concept you can teach anyone in today's world. But don't stop at do not initiate aggression. Remember the 2.0 version. Do not initiate or accept aggression.
Gun cleaning.
We've been at the range, we've been doing some training, we've been maintaining our skill set. It's equally important to maintain our equipment, and that means when you're done shooting, you want to clean your guns, get them ready for either storage or for when you're going to use them again. So let's show how that's done. First off, we want to make sure the guns are unloaded and we have no live ammo anywhere near our cleaning area. So let's check. We've got the magazine has been removed from the handgun. The chamber is clear, there's nothing in it. On our rifle, no magazine, the bolt's locked back. There's no ammunition in the chamber. So after you've verified that the guns are unloaded, you've got no ammo around, the next step is to take them apart, to break them down, also known as field stripping. This is a breakdown of the gun into its most basic components. In terms of the Glock, it's these 4 pieces here: the frame, the spring, the barrel, and the slide. With the AR, you take the bolt carrier out and the charging handle. And now that the guns have been field stripped, they're ready to clean. There's 2 components of making a gun clean: the solvent and the oil. The solvent is the cleanser, the material that removes all the nasty gunk that builds up when you shoot a gun, gets rid of all the deposits from the ammo, the dirt and grit. After you've cleaned the gun with solvent, then you oil it with a lubricant. The lubricant protects the moving parts from wear and tear, and also provides a finish over all of the metal parts to prevent rust. So first off, with the solvent, you take your cleaning rod with the tip for patches, put a patch in, kind of like threading a needle, and we're going to dip that in solvent to get the cleanser working. Once the patch is dipped in solvent, you run that through the barrel. Make sure to go all the way out the muzzle end and then come back into the chamber end. You don't want to stop halfway through and then pull it back. The patch can bind up inside. Also, if you're doing a really heavy cleaning using a cleaning brush, those bristles bind up even worse than the patches do. So make sure, whether it's on your handgun or your rifle, you're pushing all the way through the barrel before coming back the second direction. So you run patches back and forth through the barrel, get fresh patches with each pass. You'll see all kinds of dirt and grime build up on the patch. You really get a sense of how clean you're making the gun, how clean you're making the barrel. Once you've done that, run a dry patch through with no solvent, and that kind of wipes out the solvent, brings the barrel back to dry. So now that all the surfaces have been cleaned with solvent, take a rag, just give a light coating of oil. It doesn't need to be dripping wet. You just want some lubrication, some surface protectant. So don't go dousing it. You don't want to be able to fling drips of oil out of everything. On a Glock, you just need a couple of drops on the frame rails, a drop of oil on the barrel, wipe it around with your finger even, drop of oil inside the slide, and so they don't need a lot. Different guns have points you oil or not oil. Look at your owner's manual if you're not 100% sure. If you don't have an owner's manual, if you bought a used gun maybe, you can get on the internet, look up a lot of owner's manuals that way. There are also some forums you can check on. The important thing is to meet the needs of your particular gun. Keep in mind that cleaning a gun involves some potentially harmful chemicals. You want to do it in a well-ventilated area, no open flames nearby. So if you're inside, make sure it's well ventilated, perhaps have a window open, do it outside if you can. Also, when you're done cleaning, make sure to wash your hands. Just like we wash our hands after shooting because of the exposure to the chemicals and the compounds involved with the ammunition, just like that, here after cleaning, we've been using chemicals. Make sure to wash your hands.
Some tips on gear.
So Peltor earmuffs, amplified earmuffs, are a really great idea. They muffle the sound electronically. They have a chip inside that cancels out loud noise while amplifying low noise. So by having these battery-powered earmuffs, you can hear your friends, hear range commands, hear whatever you need to hear at the range, and yet still be safe and not have the hearing damage that comes from loud noise. One thing though, the way these come out of the box, you see how they're shaped with this bulge here where the microphone and the volume control is? That's considered right side up from the factory. The problem with that is it can interfere when you're shooting a rifle. That bump hits the stock. And so when you go to get a good cheek weld, and again, depending on the particular stock of your rifle, it can be a greater or lesser problem, that can take the muff off of your ear and, you know, make it painful to shoot with that loud noise. The good thing about the Peltors is the clips are reversible. You can see here I've got one flipped, one not. So just unclip them, flip it upside down. Now the big part's on top, the skinny part, you don't get the conflict with the stock of the rifle. So the arm part of the earmuff is a C shape. It's open on one side, so it's real easy to pop off. Now we've got this freestanding earphone unit. So you turn it upside down, and these posts here, there's a skinny side and a flat side. So you want to make sure when you're putting them back together, you do the open part of the C shape into the skinny side of the post. If you try to force it over the fat side, you could potentially snap off the C, and then comes the super glue and you've got problems with your earmuffs. So make sure to put the C over the skinny part of the post. It also helps to lube it up a little bit. You can just spit on your finger, get a little spit on the C end on the post. Slide the C over the post on both sides, of course. And then now we've got it upside down. We're ready to go. In this video, we've been primarily demonstrating with Glocks and AR-15s. That doesn't mean the principles we're illustrating aren't applied to other weapons. So if you have a Beretta or a 1911 versus a Glock, if you have an AK or an HK or what have you versus an AR, you're still going to follow the principles of stance, grip, sight picture, trigger control. You're still going to differentiate between an emergency reload and a tactical reload. There may be little differences in each weapon. For example, the AR magazines insert straight in and straight out, whereas on an AK, they rock in and rock out. So it's a little different motion, but the principle is still the same. If your gun runs dry, you still need to get rid of the empty mag and put in a fresh mag. Same with the malfunction clearances. You're still going to have failure to fire, failure to eject, and failure to extract, regardless of the weapon you're using. The point is to practice working through all three of those types, no matter your weapon, and that way you're going to be comfortable. And the more you do it with your own weapon, working those repetitions, getting used to doing them under pressure, under stress, if you happen to be out shooting with your friends and, hey, let me see your gun, and kind of do a little show and tell, if something happens, even with an AK, you get a click, you get a failure to fire, you'll still know tap, rack, assess, possibly go bang. It's weapon platform independent. The skills are transferable. At the range, we demonstrated flipping these Peltor earmuffs upside down to make them easier to shoot with the rifle. Well, now that we're back at home, let's show you how to change the batteries, because it's a little bit tricky and we don't want you to break anything. Easiest way is just to get a simple flathead screwdriver, and the access to the battery is through the foam padding part. Put the screwdriver flat side in and give it a twist. Rotate the screwdriver. Don't just pry it. Give it a little rotate. Padding pops off. And inside, you've got access to the batteries. They're AAAs. Be careful when you take them out and when you insert the new ones, not to damage the circuit board or the tabs that keep the batteries in place. Each side of the earmuffs has a pair of batteries, so you need to change all four when you start to have them go dead. And then when you get the fresh batteries, of course, put them in. There's diagrams on the circuit board showing the positive, negative orientation of the battery, so you make sure you do that correctly. Put the new batteries in, orient the foam, line up the padding, and they just snap back in place. You can kind of hear a little snap there. And that's that one side done. Repeat for the other side. Beyond having a gun, hearing protection and eye protection are the other two essential components if you're going to be training with firearms. Do not neglect them. Beyond these, there's plenty of other accessories and gear you can buy. If you're going to carry a gun, you want to have a good belt and holster system. There's plenty out there. Ideally, you would borrow with friends or try some out. That way you avoid ending up with a whole bin or a whole closet full of gear you don't use. The firearms industry, like a lot of industries, is more than willing to sell you all manner of gear. So you don't need to go into all that purchasing. Get the essentials and learn how to use them.
Going forward.
We can all stand to learn more and increase our skill. And while this is the first of a series of DVDs, we do encourage you to seek additional training. There's so many great options out there, from schools with permanent facilities to instructors that travel the country conducting seminars. You can join matches at your local gun club. Even look up videos on YouTube. Although being YouTube, you should take it with a grain of salt. Ignore that last comment if it's clips of our DVD that end up there. The point is to seek additional training. Don't limit yourself to gun stuff. You can take first aid courses, those come in handy. Have a good first aid kit. The point is to always keep learning, get better at protecting yourself. It'll improve your life, and heck, it's pretty fun too.
Worms.